Did you know it was National Tight Ends Day yesterday?
This is the worst.
Mota Zitabanakesi, welcome into the Worst Fantasy Show. I am your host with the least, Jack Lucenay. We are here to rejoice or lament in our fantasy football outcomes, whether you were in the hearts or in the farts. As always, we will get right into things. Before we do, I'm just going to say I'm going to try and smash through this a little bit quicker than usual because I am feeling a little under the weather. But yeah, let's just get right into the hearts. A monster week for quarterbacks, no bigger than Jalen Hurts, who ran it in 3 times. The rushing touchdowns were monstrous for Jalen Hurts. Kirk Cousins had a big day through the air. Bo Nix continues to impress in his rookie season. Matt Stafford rejoiced at the sight of Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua as he is now in the top 5 fantasy quarterbacks on the week. Justin Herbert was slinging it to my guy Ladd McConkey, who will show up later on this show. Baker Mayfield, even without his wide receivers, continues to have a dominant fantasy season. Even with the interceptions, he was trying to keep up with Kirk Cousins. They both had big fantasy days. Jaden Daniels went from probably not playing to he's a top 10 fantasy quarterback. You had Brock Purdy, Jameis Winston, Trevor Lawrence, Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, Mason Rudolph even, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, and Sam Darnold all in the 20-point club. For running back, we had James Cook with a big day. Josh Jacobs had 2 big touchdowns, and they really needed him in absence of Jordan Love. Jahmyr Gibbs had another big day. DeAndre Swift. We all buried DeAndre Swift at the beginning of the season, and now it's 4 straight weeks of fantasy dominance. Speaking of, Joe Mixon continues. He's been top 3, I think, in fantasy points per game in all the games that he's played. Devon Achane, you talk about a guy grateful for the return of his teammate, Tua Tagovailoa. Even though they didn't show up on the wide receiver hot list, I'll tell you, Tyreek and Jalen Waddle plenty happy he's back too. But Ramondre Stevenson, Kyron Williams, Jonathan Taylor, Bijan Robinson, Isaac Garendo, that's not Jordan Mason. D-Mop, Kamara, Dobbins, Mostert, King Henry, Tony Pollard, Saquon had the yardage. Maybe even if they didn't have the touchdown, and then James Conner did find the end zone. For wide receivers, monstrous day for CeeDee Lamb. Nice to see the number 1 fantasy wide receiver from last year have a number 1 fantasy week. He had my guy Ladd McConkey. With this one game, Ladd McConkey, I think now pushes me into the lead for my bet with my guy Hoove. On who will have more fantasy points this season, Ladd McConkey or JSN. McConkey with a big 2-touchdown game, over 100 yards. Josh Downs, Cedric Tillman. Tillman with the bomb from Jameis Winston to win that game, too. That was hilarious. You had MHJ pop up. That was important to see. Some chemistry maybe emerging from Marvin Harrison Jr. and Kyler Murray. Khalif Raymond. Yeah, everybody had him in the lineup, right? Yeah, Devonta Smith, Noah Brown on the hilarious Hail Maryland touchdown. Shout out to Noah Brown for winning that game and cementing yourself in NFL history because they're going to play that clip forever. Calvin Ridley. Remember Calvin Ridley? It's like as soon as I wanted to drop this guy in a bunch of leagues, of course he has a monstrous explosive game, and now when I try to pick him back up and play him next week, he'll have an absolute dud. Terry McLaurin, Darnell Mooney, Khalil Shakir, Justin Jefferson, any Rams wide receiver, basically. You had Cooper Kupp found the end zone. Puka Nacua had a big game. And Demarcus Robinson, who we'll talk about a little bit later, also had 2 touchdowns. You had Zay Flowers, Jamar Chase, Chris Olave, Keon Coleman, Garrett Wilson, Cortland Sutton, Brian Thomas Jr., who did get banged up, and Jacoby Myers found the end zone. And like I said at the top of the show, it was National Tight Ends Day, as they said about 47 times on every fucking broadcast. Oh my, it was hammered in. But hey, who scored more than Kyle Pitts this week? Nobody. Kyle Pitts was your number 1 fantasy scoring tight end on the week, followed quickly by Cade Otton, who I picked up in a lot of spots. Love Cade Otton. George Kittle, Travis Kelce, Trey McBride, Adam Troutman. What? Tucker Kraft, David Njoku, Sam Laporta. We had a Laporta sighting. Mark Andrews hilariously continues to score touchdowns week in, week out now. Tyler Conklin, Zach Ertz had 7 for 77, and even Dalton Kincaid found the end zone. And on defense, the Detroit Lions, the Los Angeles Chargers, the Houston Texans, the Kansas City Chiefs, and the Buffalo Bills all were great to excellent to serviceable. Specifically, shout out the Detroit Lions, the Houston Texans, and the Kansas City Chiefs. We featured them on the show as defensive streamers or as waiver pickups, early waiver pickups for defense. So that was nice to see all 3 of those teams on the top 5. Before we get into the farts, we got a question out here in the comments. Would you trade Brian Robinson for Brock Bowers? I mean, running backs are really worth their weight in gold this year. So let's see. My team is Josh Allen, Joe Mixon. Okay, so you're not starting him over Joe Mixon. Dobbins, Tyreek, MHJ, Ingram, Brian Robinson, Devontae Adams, with Ridley, Chubb, and Juju on my bench. You know what? I'm not doing this trade. I'm not doing this trade for 2 reasons. One, you're running back 2, being J.K. Dobbins or Nick Chubb. I mean, Nick Chubb is clearly not fully back. He's averaging like 2 yards a carry. You can't rely on Nick Chubb. And I would try to trade him on name value or even just straight drop him as a landmine to another owner, assuming this is a redraft, okay? Obviously, in a dynasty, you're stuck holding, and I get it. Brock Bowers is incredible. If it's a dynasty league and you're not competing and you're trying to position yourself for the future, that's the only way I could see you making this trade. If this is a redraft and you're competing for this year, this is going to hurt your team, I think, in the long run, because if Dobbins goes down, your RB2 is going to be incredibly unreliable. You're going to have to patch it off waivers. And I think Evan Ingram is a very competent tight end 1 who for this season is just as good as Brock Bowers in a redraft. And especially they just lost all of their wide receivers. So now even more so, like Christian Kirk's done for the year. BTJ, banged up ribs, probably won't miss more than a couple weeks at the most if he does. Gabe Davis, though, also re-injured his shoulder. So again, you're talking about 3 wide receivers suddenly out of the mix. And Evan Ingram was already a favorite target of Trevor Lawrence. So I think Ingram for this year in a redraft is just as good as Bowers. So there's no way I'm trading my RB2 in Brian Robinson that I absolutely need for this team to compete for Brock Bowers. It just doesn't make sense for this team in a redraft. If this is dynasty and you're not competing this year and you're trying to position for next year, then that is the only way I make the trade. Also, shout out to you, Sebastian. Thank you so much for the question. Oh, good God. Let's get into the farts.
Come on. Don't bullshit me. Bullshit. 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 You said so bullshit.
So it felt like it was a really good week. I'm taking a really bad L right now in my biggest league, my $150 home league. Last place gets banished for 1 year. And I just took another fucking L, so I'm going to be 3-5 in this league now, even though I have Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley. I am the number one scoring team in the league. And I already hear people in the background, oh, this is why my league, the 5 and 6 spot, get in on most points. This is why my league has league median. Okay, that's all well and good. This league doesn't have that. So those don't help my problem right now. My problem is I'm first in points. I'm 3-5, or I'm about to be 3-5 anyways. But that gives me faith of I'm just going to keep trucking. It's a long season. There's still a lot of season left. So never give up, never surrender. Even if you're staring down 2-6 right now, it is still possible, especially there's an extra week. The NFL, they're greedy with their capitalism. So that's an advantage for us. But the quarterbacks that let you down, and there were at least a lot fewer of them. Tua Tagovailoa, it was a very nice emotional story that he came back. Didn't help you for fantasy. It was under 15 fantasy points. Gardner Minshew, Anthony Richardson, CJ Stroud. This is very concerning, especially Nico Collins already on IR for the hamstrings. Stephon Diggs likely out for the season. It hasn't been reported on yet, but it's probably going to be an ACL because it was a non-contact injury. So now he's down to Tank Dell and a bunch of guys. And so really this is going to be Joe Mixon and the defense. So CJ Stroud, I think, could be on this list a few more times this year. Drake May, injured. And then we saw Jacoby Brissett come in and was competent, which sucks because that means Drake May would have had a nice fantasy day. Same with Jordan Love. Jordan Love on his way to a nice fantasy day. Unfortunately, gets injured, and then we see Malik Willis come in. Geno Smith, Caleb Williams on the wrong side of the Hail Maryland, and also just generally didn't play well for most of the game. I know they scored the touchdown late. That was on the back of DeAndre Swift. Caleb Williams made some plays, but ultimately he didn't play good enough to win the game even before the Hail Mary, and was lucky to be in that position anyways, in my opinion. But that's another story for another day. For the running backs, again, not a lot of names on the fart list this week. Chuba Hubbard, Javonte Williams, Ken Walker, Nick Chubb, Zach Moss, Ray Davis, and Tyler Algier reminded you why they were backups. And the biggest one of all this week, maybe the fart of the week, Jordan Mason, who had been dealing with the AC joint sprain and was a full practice, full go, seemed like everything was great. And next thing you know, Isaac Guerrero is the one that gets 100 yards in this game because fuck you, 49ers Shanahanigans. Like, I think people forget that we don't have Bellatrix in the league anymore in terms of running backs, but people forget that Shanahanigans, pops its ugly head every now and again. When it's not Christian McCaffrey, it could just be anybody. And this is also just part of my frustration, lamentation, and my plea to the fantasy community that we need to increase the number of IR spots and we need to make them pliable. I don't care if the guy is questionable, doubtful, whatever. Everything should be allowed to go on IR. I really believe that after this year because more than ever, and teams have always been disingenuous, lying little dicks about their injuries and that kind of thing. But like dudes used to just play through it because, tough 80s football. The problem is like now it's almost like they're still doing the bullshit lying stuff about the injuries, but like dudes are just sitting out randomly or like, again, like Jordan Mason popping up with this, nothing burger of a game and it ultimately all going to Isaac Guerrero. Another one was Rico Dowdle, popped up late inactive in the same game because he was dealing with an illness. It's like, where was that report all week? Like, what? So sick of these goddamn teams. All right. Wide receivers. JSN and Tyler Lockett in the absence of DK Metcalf, I felt really let you down, especially Tyler Lockett, obviously, but even JSN with his like 6 for 50. And yeah, maybe it helps me in my bet with Hoove, but it doesn't help you for fantasy football. Packers wide receiver, they were all disappointing, and they're all going to be disappointing for as long as Jordan Love is out. I'm not touching any of them. Amon-Ra St. Brown, I put him on this list because when you only have 2 catches for 7 yards and you save yourself with a touchdown, you still belong on the fart list, my friend. Devontae Adams, another 4 for 50 game. Christian Kirk, season's over, and was injured on a long play, which sucked. Jalen Waddle, first game back for Tua, and he was also dealing with injuries. He was very much relegated to the second role. You had Jalen Tolbert that a lot of people were trying to stream. Jordan Addison, Rashad Bateman was another one I was getting a lot of questions about. And again, Rashad Bateman, son of a bitch, tricked us with the consistency. He had like 4 weeks in a row. He was pretty consistent. Nah, disappears on you. He did have 5 targets, granted, and he did drop a long one where that could have definitely changed his day, but that is the way of the Ravens wide receivers. Drake London was disappointing. Keenan Allen. DJ Moore, another one that this is personal to me and very concerning. I need to see more from Caleb Williams. I really need to see some development from this kid. I think DJ Moore is going to have better days. And I think the Commanders' defense is underrated. That might be an expectation going forward that we all need to adjust. Is that, hey, don't just blindly, because the Commanders' defense, people were playing the matchup base in the beginning of the season. And I think there's this idea that they're still going to get into shootouts, and no, their defense has been playing lights out. So I really think that they are potentially just a team to avoid in terms of matchup. So hopefully DJ Moore still has brighter days ahead. DeAndre Hopkins didn't make the initial impact with the Kansas City Chiefs that we would have hoped, but I think that's coming down the road for sure. Tutu Atwell has been relegated to irrelevance while Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua are back. It's very much DeMarcus Robinson is the wide receiver 3. And then Pop Douglas, Michael Pittman, and Amari Cooper should be Amari Pooper with 1 for 3. For tight end, on National Tight End Day of all days, how could you disappoint us? Brock Bowers, only 5 for 58 and no touchdown. You're supposed to be the next greatest tight end in the history of fantasy football. What's going on? Hunter Henry, 5 for 45, decent day, but again, on National Tight End Day, you didn't catch touchdown. Isaiah Likely, Taysom Hill, Jake Ferguson, only 6 for 23. Cole Kmet, 1 for 14. That one sucked too. Disappearing act by Cole Kmet, who had been pretty decent. On defense, you had the Miami Dolphins, the New York Jets, the Baltimore Ravens, and the Chicago Bears. Of course, the Chicago Bears. I mean, the Chicago Bears, you should have pivoted as soon as they said Jaden Daniels was playing, but let's just say you forgot and you were like, you get to the end of that game and you're like, oh my God, I survived Jaden Daniels and everything seems to be okay. And oh my God, like you felt it just as bad as Bears fans. Oh my God. I still can't get over the fan video of the kid Stevenson, the cornerback, who's way the fuck off, like on the hash, like dicking around, pointing into the crowd and shit. And it's like the play starts. It's not just that he like was doing that shit pre-snap and then like got back. The play starts and there's still like 5 more seconds before he kind of turns around and is like, maybe I should like get involved on this and do my job. And then ultimately he's the one that goes up and tips it up so that it goes right into Noah Brown's hands. Fucking crazy. Oh man. Yeah, let's get into some waivers and let's actually wrap this up nice and neat today.
The fuck? The fuck? The fuck is in the air. The fuck? There's white shit everywhere. The fuck? I must be fucking baked and this shit's probably fake. The fucking hell did I just take? The fuck?
For quarterbacks. So this is more shallower leagues. Again, always keep an eye out. Like in single quarterback leagues, it's going to be very different. Kirk Cousins is available in one of my single quarterback leagues, and it's a competitive league. But Aaron Rodgers is the one that I think, especially off a bad game, and especially in single quarterback leagues, I think he is going to be generally available as a streaming option. Has Houston, Arizona, and Indianapolis coming up next. And as much as like they have looked moribund, have the New York Jets, he's still throwing the ball a shit ton as Aaron Rodgers. He's throwing the ball at least 30 times a game, generally speaking. Has Devontae Adams, has Garrett Wilson, has Breece Hall. So for a streaming fantasy option, regardless of whether they win or lose the game, he's getting like 20 points a game. You can do worse. Now, and for Superflex, Mason Rudolph is a Robitussin player. It's gross. It tastes awful, but it works. Bryce Young, suddenly back in Superflex relevance. If you're dealing with injuries or bye weeks coming up next week, has New Orleans and the New York Giants. His next two matchups does Bryce Young. So he's actually going to be a viable back end streaming quarterback in Superflex and 2 quarterback leagues. And then again, same kind of mantra, Superflex deep. I'm looking for a streaming quarterback just to fill a spot. Malik Willis, Jacoby Brissett, and Jake Hayner should be available. For the running backs, Zach Charbonnet is going to be a stash. Ken Walker definitely did not look like he was right or himself. If they decide to give him a week off, Zach Charbonnet is going to be a smash play against the Rams. Isaac Garendo, even though this is very much you have to be a winning team if you're going to stash Isaac Garendo through a bye week. If Christian McCaffrey doesn't come back, if Jordan Mason's injury seems to be more serious than originally thought, Isaac Garendo has already shown that he is the next man up, and he should just be staffed and handcuffed anyways. And then the guy I'm not chasing is definitely Zeke. I'm not chasing that, but I think Jaleel McLaughlin could be worth a stream. The Denver Broncos are going to be on the road against the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens are very much a pass funnel. They're very good against the run, but they can be had against the pass. So out of the running backs, give me the pass-catching running back that just caught a nice touchdown this past week. So I think Jaleel McLaughlin is worth a streaming play if you're really desperate next week. For wide receivers, again, a lot of guys were dropped, and you're going to have to check in your league, like Josh Downs, Ladd McConkey, Keon Coleman. Those are 3 names that definitely could have hit waivers and may still be there. So you need to go check your league. If any of those guys are on waivers, they should be added. I'm not going to chase Khalif Raymond, except in leagues, obviously, that include return yards. Shout out Scott Fishbowl. That's the league where he would be a high priority ad if he was on waivers. But otherwise, I'm not chasing Khalif Raymond. Noah Brown has actually, been a streaming option here and there. He's not going to catch a Hail Mary every game, but beyond that, he was kind of getting involved. It feels like he's very much like the wide receiver 3. And maybe, the Hail Maryland gives him a little bit of juice going forward, and maybe we see a little bit more from him. The guy I'm actually prioritizing, obviously, Browns wide receivers in order: Jerry Jeudy, Cedric Tillman, and then Elijah Moore. And if you want to argue that it's Cedric Tillman first and Jerry Jeudy second, I don't hate that. I just view Jerry Jeudy as the safer PPR floor. And then I think Tillman is very much like the explosive play guy. But if you want to prioritize Tillman above Jeudy, by all means. But Browns wide receiver and Demarcus Robinson. Shout out to Jason Moore of Fantasy Footballers. This was actually a tidbit from one of their shows last week that Demarcus Robinson is the one that actually presents as the wide receiver 3 when both Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua are active. When Kupp and Nacua are both in, Robinson is the one you want as a streaming play. And then in really deep leagues, I think Jalen Coker, Michael Wilson, and even Xavier Legette. So Coker and Legette for the Panthers, both I think could be potentially worth streaming plays against the Saints defense, who have definitely been reeling, and in a divisional matchup, and they're going to be at home. And then Michael Wilson kind of emerging as the wide receiver too for the Cardinals. For tight end, Hunter Henry could potentially hit waiver wires. I think people got really sick of the experience with Jacoby Brissett. I would still keep Hunter Henry given the state of tight ends this year. So if he hits waivers and you're really desperate for a tight end play, he's maybe worth a stash. Same kind of deal with Mike Gesicki. Like very much Hunter Henry and Mike Gesicki can absolutely disappear on you in a game, but they will have serviceable streaming games. If you want an option that's maybe more consistent than those guys, ironically enough, Zach Ertz has been getting it done game in and game out, just coming off 7 for 77. I also like Tyler Conklin. He's probably less available. So Will Dissly, he was a hot ad last week because he had 11 targets and 8 receptions. Another 5 receptions this week. He is worth an ad in deep leagues if you are in need of a tight end. And finally on defense, looking forward to next week, the Eagles, the Philadelphia Eagles in a home matchup against the Jacksonville Jaguars, who will be down Christian Kirk and might still be down ETN, might also be down BTJ. And, just generally have been bad on offense this year. So the Jags on the road against the Eagles are going to be a hot pickup on defense this week. The Commanders defense is absolutely for real, and they get the New York Giants. Even though the Giants are at home, I don't give a shit. I'm picking up the Commanders, and I'm starting them if they're available. I also like probably kind of deeper plays here. Cleveland Browns against the Chargers. I think Chargers coming off a big game. But I think the Browns also coming off a big game. The Browns very much a tougher defense. They're really good against the run, so I don't think Dobbins is going to be able to do much. I think Herbert's going to have to throw a lot, and I could see them turning the ball over. So I could see the Browns defense being viable in deeper leagues. And I also like the Bengals against the Raiders, because the Raiders have just been a hot mess. Though they did kind of do surprisingly well against the Kansas City Chiefs, but that really felt like because it's a divisional matchup, they get up for the Chiefs. But against the Bengals, I feel like they could get the shit kicked out of them in this game. So, Bengals defense going to be definitely worth a stream, I think. But hey, that's it for me tonight. I'm going to wrap it up. I'm actually very excited for some real nerdy shit. You can actually see it right behind me on this pink chair. I've got my PlayStation 2 set up. And I'll show you guys. I actually just picked this up for $100 plus $10 delivered. A guy brought me all these games. These are all Spider-Man games. Oh shit! Every single one of them, as you can see, is a Spider-Man game. And the ones I'm most excited about, I have this one here for Super Nintendo. Brought it to me in the box. Spider-Man and X-Men team up. But this is the one that I was most excited about. Spider-Man Web of Shadows for PlayStation 2. This shit. Okay, this game for PlayStation 3, when I found it, cost me $120. So the fact that the guy was selling this is just part of a bundle. So again, just these 2 games alone right here. Spider-Man X-Men for Super Nintendo in the box, and then Spider-Man Web of Shadows, some crazy one that I didn't even know existed for PlayStation 2. Amazing Allies edition. So this is the one I'm about to go play right now. So yes, you guys enjoy some Monday Night Football. I'll probably check in. Obviously, I'm a Steelers fan, but I'm not gonna waste my night watching Pittsburgh Steelers take on the New York Giants. I'm going to be playing some Web of Shadows, like I said, probably watching some Monday Night Raw, but I'll be back with you guys Thursday. Probably going to do a live stream again, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll go through all the matchups, start sets, take some questions, that kind of shindig. But until the next time, I will catch all of you guys on the flip side.
He's running down the middle by the 50. He's at the 30. He's bare-chested and banging his chest. Now he runs the opposite way. He runs at the 50. He runs at the 40. The guy is drunk, but there he goes. The 20. They're chasing him. They're not going to get him. Waving his arms, bare-chested. Somebody stop that man. Here comes